Hi, this is Dorothy with Little Dot Designs and Creations, and I'm here today and we are going to do a little tutorial on a product that's probably my number one seller in my online store, and I do some custom orders for it too, and that is my travel neck pillow. And this is a pillow that you can keep in your car if you're on the passenger side and you're taking a nap. You can put this behind your neck, and it helps support your neck, keeps you from slumping over and that kind of thing. And I keep one in my car all the time, and I use it all the time. And I use mine even when I'm not sleeping because it just feels good. And most of these are 100% cotton. I do make some in 100% flannel as well, because especially in these cold winter months, it's cold outside and I'm cold all the time. So the one in my car is made out of flannel. So not only is it soft and comfy, it's warm and comfy. So the one thing that I do on my pillow is I decided to put a little zipper in here. It's just a very small zipper, but that makes it adjustable so that you can take some of the fiber fill out of the inside or put more in depending on the amount of firmness that you like. You could also take that out and wash the outside cover and put it back in. It's a job to do that, but it can be done. But as we go along doing different projects, you'll see that I'm just really kind of obsessed with zippers. I put zippers and everything, but it's worked out really well on this one. And I think that's one reason mine has been one of the best sellers online, is because it does have that zipper. So I'm more than happy to sell you a pillow. They're on my online store, which is littledotdesigns.com. And but I'm going to go from beginning to end on how I do this and how I set up my little template, and we'll go from there. So this is, of course, what a finished pillow looks like. It's three-sided. It's got a strap on each end so that you can hang it up by that or carry it or whatever you want to do. You don't have to have those, and you could just have one on one end, but I just usually put one on both ends. You can make them all three sides one color. I usually pick three colors that I just kind of think go together, but I do some solid colors too, so whatever you like. And I use a 4-inch zipper that kind of matches the color. We'll talk about that more along the way also. This is what they look like before I put the fiber fill in. And usually I make up several of those and just keep them hanging up. And then, because it takes a good while to fill one of these things, and I weigh out my fiber fill and everything, so I just keep them hanging up, and if someone orders one, I will take that one out of the stack and fill it and mail it off. So first of all, I have a template that I use, and it's a homemade template. I can tell you how I do this. And I do this for lots of projects. And I started out with my pattern as one that I got online, and over the years I just kind of developed it into my own thing. So once I finally got it tweaked down to where I liked it, I decided to make me a template, and this is it. Of course, you can see that it's half the size of the regular pillow, because right here is a fold line, and I cut on the fold. So how I made this was I went to Walmart and I bought these. Oops, got a whole bunch of them here. Sorry, my dog's barking. So these are just kitchen cutting mats, and let's see, this brand happens to be Dexas, Dexas grip mats, flexible cutting mats. So the reason I got these, they're easy to cut. They're not totally flimsy. They're just thick enough that I can run my rotary cutter by there if I'm careful without cutting the mat, and do a pretty good job. And also on the back, it has this textured non-slip grippy stuff on there, which makes it really good when you're cutting. So once I got my pattern developed to where I wanted it, I cut out my template. And now I'm going to stop and readjust my camera just a little bit so that you can see my work surface and see what I've got going on, and I can show you more. I've readjusted the camera now so that you're not seeing me, my face, but you're seeing more what I'm doing. And I'm kind of new at this, so we may readjust this camera 2 or 3 times before we figure out the right configuration. But right now I'm showing you again my template, just how I do it. And once I figured that out on paper, I traced it and I cut that out. And I just write on my template with permanent marker. And I've got on here neck pillow, cut 3. So I know that I have to cut 3 of these for 1 pillow. And down here I've got fold. That's my fold line. And then I have wrote over here, cut 2 strips for the ends. That's those little end loops we were talking about that are 4 by 12 inches. And then I cut 2 strips for my zipper tabs that are 4 inches by 1.5 inch. And I continually make notes on these things. I've wrote down 4-inch zipper because that's what I generally use. Now, if I don't have a 4-inch and I need to use a larger one, I can do that and just cut it down to size. And 10 ounce of fiber fill. So that's what I put in a pillow before I mail it out to a customer. And, you know, that's probably the max fill that you would want. And if that's too tight, then you can take a little bit out. But that is what I do with those little cutting mats. Okay, and you really don't need a whole lot for this project. This template, I use a rotary cutter. This is probably the first rotary cutter that was ever made. It is an Olfa. I don't even know the brand, but it's one of the straight ones. It's the only one I've ever had that I've got a few cheap ones that I use for paper and things, but this is my main cutter. It feels good in my hand, so I've never had a reason to change it. So it's one of the 45 millimeter blades, and it's great. I've had it for, goodness, probably at least 30 years, and it's still going strong. So kudos to Olfa. One of these days I'm just going to buy another one just for the heck of it. And a ruler. Now, if you want to do this with scissors, if you're not comfortable with a rotary cutter, then you can just draw around it with a pencil and use your scissors to cut that out. And I will say that I have a brand of scissors that I really recommend. They are the Kai scissors, Kai. And I've had all kinds of scissors, including the Gingers, which are great too, but this is my number 1 scissors, is the Kai scissors. These, they say kaiscissors.com, or I think I may have even bought some from Amazon. I'm not sure. On the back, it's even got a phone number for the Kai company. So try those out. This is the model 7205, and it is my favorite. And also, if you're using a rotary cutter, you want to use a ruler, and this is my favorite ruler of all time. You can use what you want to, but this is the Quilter Select brand. They make all sizes. This just happens to be a 6 by 12, which works well for this project, but I like them for 2 reasons. The lines on here are very thin, and the thinner that your lines are, the more accurate your cut is. And also on the back, there is this very matte, non-slip surface, and it works better than any non-slip ruler I have ever owned. The entire ruler is got that material on it, and I've had this I've got 2 or 3 of them, and I've had them for several years, and that coating has held up well. I've not had any trouble with it at all. If I had anything negative to say, it's that this is a yellow tinted ruler, and I guess it has to be that way, maybe for that product that's on the back. I'm not sure. The only thing I think would make it better is if it's a clear ruler, and it's been so long since I ordered these, they may even have a clear option now. That's something I need to check out. But quilterselect.com, I can't recommend that ruler enough. Okay, Now, if you have a rotary mat, cutting mat, that's great. If you don't, you really don't need it for this project. And I'll do it both ways just so you can see. And I don't have one of the fancy store-bought rotary mats either. I have this, which is a homemade thing made from just a little Lazy Susan, like you'd get at probably the dollar store or Walmart. And I had my husband cut me a piece of plywood in a circle, and he glued a smaller piece on the bottom, and it just sits right down in that and works great. And then if I need to take that off, I can. But I've used this for years as well. I will say, because it's a flat piece of wood, you probably, and see, I just cut out old mats that were wore out and glued it on the top. Because that is a big solid piece of wood, and if you've just got one layer of mat on there, it might make your blade dull a little quicker. So I've got, as of right now, I think, well, I've just got 2 glued on there, but probably I would put a 3rd layer on there when I wear out a mat. It just makes it a little less rough on your blade, I think. So you'll see me use this, and you'll see me do it without that as well. And the only other thing I'd say before we get started is this project also is pretty user friendly to a fat quarter. So if you know what fat quarters are, you can buy those just about anywhere. And they're approximately 18 inches by 21 inches. And to do this project, you would need, to do 1 pillow, you would need 3 fat quarters. And we may, if time allows, I can show you how I cut that out of a fat quarter. But it's very doable, so that means there's not much expense in this. But most of the time what I do is I just pick out 3 fabrics that I think work well together, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Seems like I almost always have a solid in there. This time I don't. I wanted some green in there, so I just went and picked out a couple of greens, and this is not a green, it's more of a tan or brown. Just decided to throw it in there. Honestly, it just seems like just about anything you throw in there works out. I've done a lot of novelty type fabrics, like horses, if you're into horses, or dogs or cats, things like that. Superheroes, that kind of thing. But today, these are the 3 fabrics I picked out and we're going to use, and I'm going to show you how I cut them. Now this video, because I am showing you from beginning to end, will probably be pretty long. So if I get into an area that you don't care about, just skip ahead to the part you know. I mean, some people know how to cut their fabric. I don't need to show everybody that. So I'm going to start with this green fabric, and I'm going to cut my first piece. And honestly, the more you can iron your fabric throughout this project, the easier it is. I started out cutting me, most fabrics come in a 45-inch wide, on a 45-inch wide strip on a bolt, and that bolt will be folded over. Now I fold my fabric up on this board and it's folded again, so I have 4 layers there. So honestly, when I cut my pieces out, I usually get 2 pillows out of everything I cut here. So what I start off doing is cutting these triangular pieces, and I cut them at about 10.5. That's being conservative, so I'm not wasting, but I have enough little extra pieces to cut what I need. So I'll do 10.5, and I cut that 10.5 on each of my 3 colors. So it's 10.5 by the 44 width, and of course when you cut your selvage edge off, it's a little less than 44, but that's what they call it. Okay, there's one. I'll lay that over there. Here's my next sort of a green paisley kind of color. And you can see I've cut on this one before. I'm going to turn that around because it has a notch out of it. And I'm just lining this up with the lines on my mat. Sometimes I just eyeball it. Where do I my ruler? Good gracious. Goodness gracious, lost my ruler. It's under my bolt here. Okay. So I'll come down here to 10.5 on my mat and just slice it right off of there. Okay. There's me 2 pieces. My lighting is not good where I'm at right now. I'm in my basement. I used to have a sewing room upstairs, and I decided to turn that room back into a bedroom, so I've started moving all my stuff back into my basement with big plans to set up a nice little sewing area, but that's a slow go. So I'm kind of working in a place with not good lighting, and I've just got a mess everywhere. That was extra. I should put on that bolt. So if you see a mess, I'm sorry. One of these days I'll get it organized. Okay. And this one, it's not green, but we'll see what it turns out to be when we combine it with something. I like to experiment with colors. Okay, so I've got those 3 cuts, and that's really the fabric, all the fabric that we're going to need for this project. Okay, put this up out of our way, and actually I'm going to turn the camera off. I'm going to put my fabric up, and I'm going to iron this just so that we get the best result out of our project. Okay, so I've just got back from the ironing board, and all I did was just iron these things down really flat so that they cut well. They're really just like they came off the bolt. They're folded in twice. They're folded in half twice, long ways. Okay, so what I've got to do is cut my little template out of all 3 of these fabrics. And I'm going to do one of them on this rotary cutting mat, and then I'll do the rest of them off of it just so you can see the difference. So flatten that down, and here's my fold, and I want to make sure that I get this fold of the fabric on here. Now after we cut this out, I'm going to bring my iron over here. I've got a very particular way that I iron these things that again has some little tips to it to make it a little easier to sew. So I've got it on here. I'm gonna put my hand on here just to hold it down, and it doesn't take a lot because it's got that grippy stuff on it. And this is not thick like a ruler, but it's thick enough that if you take your time, you can go right along the edge of that little cutting mat and cut this out. Okay, and again, you could just go around this with a pencil and cut it out if you prefer. I feel like I've used a rotary cutter most of my life, so some people are a little intimidated by that. Okay, there's one, and I keep these little edges because I'm going to do some things with that. Now I will tell you that on my template, here's a little sprig. You didn't get got. I've got right here in the center, I've got a little notch. Okay, and I used to always put a little notch right there. And all that did was it told me where the center of my pillow was at. I don't really use that anymore, but some people may prefer that way over the way that I do it that I will show you later. So that's there if you wanted to cut out that little notch or just put one little clip right there and know where the center of your pillow is. Okay, so now I'm going to take that off and open this up. And here I've got 2 pieces ready for pillows. So, if I wanted to do them all one color, I could. But this will be enough for me to do 2 pillows in this design. Okay, so I'll put that aside. And I'm going to do the same thing with these other two pieces of fabric, but I'm going to do it without this turntable. So let me get that out of the way. Alright, because I want you to see that it's just as easy to do it this way, but I think because it's easy this way is because of the grippiness of this mat. They're just really good. So I'm going to line up my fold again. I know I'm a little far away from you. Okay. And then still put my hand on here. I'm going to pull it back towards me because I'm reaching across the table. Okay, and do exactly the same thing. But you know there's going to come a point around this corner that I'm not going to be able to reach all the way around this thing. Well, a little bind right there. Watch those fingers. I can usually get most of the way around the top, depending on what you're cutting. I think my blade's just a tad dull. It's leaving some places. So when I get there, I've still got this side to cut. I just take my hands off it, leave that mat on there, and I just pick up the edge out here that's not been cut on, and I can move that thing just about anywhere, and I'll spin it around. And that cutting mat never moves. So again, I love these things. Okay, and I just start back where I left off. Now, some people are left-handed. I always have a little trouble teaching people that are left-handed, especially crochet. Okay, there we go. We've got our second color. And again, there's two of them. And one more time. This color may not match well, but once you get them put together, I just think things you didn't think would look good together look fine. Look like it was meant to be that way. See, sometimes I'll stop right in the middle there. I think I'm going to have to change the blade in my rotary cutter. I haven't changed it in a long time. Some people say you need to change this blade between every project, and I just, you know what? These blades are expensive. I just don't do that. I change it when it gets dull, when I can tell it's dull. And then we have our third one cut out, just like that. So of course, if I wasn't filming this, this will go really quick. So there's two more. So now I'm done with this, unless I need to refer back to it for measurements on my other little pieces. But let's pull these apart and get our three pieces for our pillow. That one. Prints are great. Solids are great. Usually like a dark, medium, and a light. Okay, so there's my three pieces for that. Now, for our little zipper tabs, we need some pieces. I might have to cut another little piece for my ends, unless I had some here on the fold, maybe this one. Sometimes I have to cut another little piece, and sometimes I don't. What's that on the fold? Okay. Alright, so I don't have pieces here quite big enough. If I'd have cut it just a little more than, a little bigger, I would have had enough to make my end straps. But I don't. So I'm going to cut one more little piece of fabric. I may have some down here in my scrap bin. Not quite. Okay, I'm just going to cut another piece real quick. instead of wasting time searching. So maybe cut another little 4-inch strip is plenty. Okay. So here's that straight edge that I cut when I was cutting those 10.5-inch strips. So I'm just going to take my ruler. Gee whiz, I keep losing everything. Here it is. And I'm going to cut a 4-inch strip. So this time I'm not using the lines on my mat, I'm using the lines on my ruler. Putting it on 4 inches and just cutting me a strip. Okay. Now, what I need for those 2-inch straps, I need 2 pieces that are 4 inches by 12 inches. Okay. So I can usually get actually 3, which is an uneven number, out of this strip. So let me, first I take this end where the selvage end is at, and I just cut that off, make it good and straight. Okay. And then I line that up over here on my edge at 0, come over to 12 inches, cut that, and then I've got 2 pieces that are 4 by 12, and those will be my 2 end straps. Okay, so then we need, and I'm going to go ahead and cut one more out of this. I can use it with that next one. I line this up on, unfold it, line it up on 12, and I'll end up with just a little piece left over. And I could use this piece to cut my little zipper tabs out of that we're going to go over. But since I've got these little scrappy pieces, I usually generally use that and save this to make a bigger square out of that I can use in another project. I like to be a little conservative there. So I will pull in some of these smaller pieces like this. This would be a good one to get. So if I unfold that, and normally I would probably iron that, but I can eyeball it. And we want to get, I'm going to cut it as straight as I can just to get that ugly edge off of it. Okay. So now these pieces are going to be 4 inches by 1.5. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to cut a strip. Let's see. I'm going to have to iron this real quick. Just won't lay down. Okay. Just iron that little crease out so I can work with it. I'm going to cut a strip that is 1.5 inches. 1.5. Okay. And I'll do that again. I think there's enough to get another one. 1.5. Okay. Now, so then the other way I need to get 4 inches. And I really only need 2 for each pillow. 1 for each end of the zipper. So there's that. I'm going to go ahead and cut these 2 for the next project and just lay them to the side. Making these videos, I guess you'll see me make mistakes as we go and work through those too. Okay, so there's what we have. Now, again, I'm going to turn the camera off and I'm going to set up my iron right here where you can see, because again, I have a very specific way that I iron things that make it a little easier to sew. Okay, I'm back and I've set up a little ironing surface right here in the middle of my mat. Our area that I iron in is just really dark right now, so I didn't want to move my camera over there. So I've tried to move it over here. So I'm going to show you how I iron everything. And on these big pieces, this is where I'm a little bit particular because I fold it I fold it in half long ways, and I fold it in half this way. And I make sure I have really good creases there. I'll do this one, because that's going to help me when I'm sewing. I'm going to make a good crease down this way. And if you remember, on my template, I said there's a notch on the end that you can notch, and you'll know where the middle is. But this crease right here on each end, well, you can go by that to know where the middle is. And then if you fold it again, the middle this way, you'll know where your middle is in the lengthwise as well. And that's going to work out really well when you get to sewing. If we can iron these pieces just right, have all this little prep done, when we go to the sewing machine, it's a pretty fast process. Ironing is very important, especially in quilting also. That was something that was hard for me to learn when I was younger, but the more you put into your pressing and your prep, the better your project's going to be. Okay, so I've got all three of those pieces ironed in that way. I'll lay those aside. And then my two straps for the end, I'm going to show you how to do those. This one I've already done, and basically you've probably, if you've ever done a bag strap, you've done this. It's just folded in on itself, folded to the middle, and then folded in again. I don't know if you can see this very well on the camera, but I'm going to iron this one. I'm going to fold it over in half lengthwise and iron that down. Okay, this is very hot. Burn my fingers. Okay, then I can see my crease in the middle, and I'm going to fold this side into the middle. Now, usually I can do this all in one step, but I'll try to do it the way we should do it. And then I can flip it around and fold this side in to the middle. And it's so hot, I can hardly touch it. Okay, and then I'm going to fold all of that over so that it's folded in on itself. So hopefully that makes sense. That is very hot. This iron I've had for 100 years. It's an Auric, and it is cordless or corded, either way you want to use it. It's fantastic. Anyway, get this one, it's not so hot. When we go to the sewing machine, I'm going to sew down each long side of this. I'm going to sew this side is open, so of course I'm going to sew that down to hold it closed. But I just sew down this side too, so that it just looks better. The two sides will kind of match, especially if your thread is contrasting. Okay, now on the zipper situation, this is a 4-inch zipper, and you can just pick something that you think matches. This is just what I had. This is a 4-inch, which works out perfect for this, but if I have a 7-inch, I'll just cut it down and use that as well. And I've done them several different ways in these bags, and this is just the way that I have found works the easiest, the least finagling goes on with it, and ends up looking better in the end. The zipper ends up being almost invisible. But I do use a tab on each end, and that's not 100% necessary either. It's just something I prefer to do. So these little tabs, I folded them in exactly the same way I did the two end straps. So that one I've done. This one I'm just going to fold over. And then again, I fold the two sides, open it up, fold the two sides into that middle, then fold it over on itself. This one's so little you can surely do it all in one piece. Okay, now this is our zipper, and we're going to sew one of these tabs on each end of the zipper. But before I do that, I want to examine my zipper. And let me move this board. So there's a little metal stop on this end of the zipper. I try to leave that in unless I'm shortening a zipper and I might have to take it out. But I try to leave that just because it's a little extra stability. But if I were to lay this down here, you can see where it hits this. And I like for it to be more down here in the middle because I don't want it down here or here because I don't want my needle to hit that and break a needle. That does happen. So what I'm going to do is just trim a little bit off, and I'll just eyeball this. Okay, trim a little bit off, but leave my little metal thing on and put it in there. And then when we go to the sewing machine, I'm going to sew down through here. Okay, and that's going to attach it. There'll be more to it later. But then also, I'm going to do the same thing on this end. This is where the zipper pull is at. And I'm going to open my zipper up a little. Goodness, that's a tight one. There we go. And then I just take my fingers and kind of place it back together and trim just a little bit off of that too. I'm just eyeballing this to where I sometimes have to cut it 2 or 3 times. To where I think the metal piece will fall about middle ways of this little strip, and that's probably going to do it. Okay, and then when I go to the sewing machine, I'm going to do the same thing here, but it's a little bit harder because the zipper's open, and you've got to keep that open in order to sew it because that little pull will be in your way. But it works out okay. All right, now we are ready to put this thing together. And I am going to try to move my camera over to my sewing area, and we'll sew this together. And one more thing I do on these end straps I forgot to do is after I get them ironed that way, I go ahead and flip them over long ways like this and put a little crease in the middle of that also. That's not 100% necessary, but just a little thing that helps. Okay. All right, we're going to move over to the sewing machine. Okay, I've moved to the sewing machine, and I think we're going to have to move this camera again, maybe set up a different tripod because it's hard to get an angle where you're going to be able to see here. So I want to be able to move you over beside me to see that. But before I did, I was going to just tell you that I have a machine here that I've had since 2016. It's a Brother Anovus. It's the Dreamweaver XE, and it's also an embroidery machine. And this thing has been an absolute workhorse. So it's a great machine. If you ever have an opportunity to have one similar to it, it's great. I have an extension table on it. It just makes a really good work surface. So this is what I'm going to be using. And whenever I go to cutting these pillows out, I usually cut out a whole bunch of them at one time and just keep them in a basket. I've got a whole big basket full here that I've already got ironed and clipped together and ready to go, so that when I sit down to machine, I can just sew a whole bunch of them. So I have our one we just cut out sitting out here. Sorry. And I'm going to try to adjust this camera so that you can get right down here with me and see what my hands are doing at this machine. Okay, wow, I have really moved the camera everywhere in the world to try and get you as close down here in business with me to this machine as I can. But the light is terrible. My camera setup is not as good. I'm going to have to work on that. I figured out you just about need a camera hanging from the ceiling to do this, but I hope I've got you in here where you can kind of get the gist of it. I'm starting with something simple. Do the simple parts first, and then if that doesn't work, we can always move our camera. But I'm starting out with the 2 end straps, and I'm going to sew down each side of each strap. I'm starting with the side that's open. And I'm probably going to be sewing about an 1/8 of an inch in on this edge. I've got a little mark here on my foot that I use to go by. And now when I turn my machine on, it's automatically set at a 2.5 millimeter stitch length. And when I'm doing this, something that will be seen, or sometimes you want it to be seen, I will change that to a 3 or a 3.5 so that it just looks better. And also, I try to use either white or a light gray thread on almost all of these projects, because when you're using multicolors, you just really get tired of winding bobbins and changing your thread color. So those two colors, especially the really light gray, goes with just about anything. Okay, so we're just going to sew down this edge. I usually do both of them kind of simultaneously. This is like chain sewing. So I've sewed down two sides of both of them. I'm just going to turn around, sew down the other side. Now this machine has a lot of little fancy things on it, like automatically cutting thread and automatically threading the needle. That's handy. But it's not 100% necessary, and I'm pretty much a sewing machine fanatic. So I have lots of machines that I use, not just this one. I have, let's see, three I think, treadles that are in operating order that I do sew on, and I've made quilts on those. I love doing that. And I also have 6 featherweights, Singer featherweights, if you know what that is. And maybe sometime we'll do a little class and do some sewing on featherweights. Okay, that was pretty easy. Now we're going to go to our zipper, and we're going to add the 2 little zipper tabs. Let's see, did I lose one? Let's see, I think I dropped a zipper tab. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I've got my zipper. Can't tell what's on camera. And my 2 zipper tabs. And I'm just going to sew them on each end. And now, when working with a zipper, you're usually going to switch to a zipper foot. And I will when I'm putting it in. But for this little piece of the project, it's usually not necessary. I'm going to start on this closed end first and just sandwich that in. And if you'll see, my little tabs are a little wider than my zipper. Most zippers are 1 inch wide. That's why I cut my little strips 1.5 inches. And then when I get done putting my tab on, I can just trim those edges off. Okay. So I'm just going to come over and let's see. The machine's acting hateful here. Okay. I want to know where that little metal piece is, right? I want it to be kind of halfway in there. So I move it around to where it is. I don't want my needle to hit it. And there will be a point in this project where not only am I sewing on this edge of the zipper pull, but I'll also be sewing on this outside edge. That's why I want that little metal thing to hit like right in the middle. That way when I'm sewing on those edges, I don't hit it with my needle. Okay. I'm just going to sew across. And now, depending on what kind of zipper you have, I usually go back to 2.5 stitch here. Be careful going across the actual zipper part of the zipper with your needle. If it's metal, I usually take my hand crank it across there. If it's nylon, it's usually no problem, but you will get tired of breaking needles sewing across the zipper. Okay, so I've sewn across that one. That was the easy end. Snip these little threads off. These are, me and my granddaughter call these squeezy scissors. I don't know what they're really called, but they're real handy for a sewing machine. Okay, now this one we have to unzip the zipper. And same concept, that little metal piece we want to hit right about dead center of this tab, but at the same time on this piece you're holding those two little flaps together where your zipper's unzipped. Makes it a little tricky, but you can do it. And I sew, again, probably about 1/8 of an inch in from the edge of that tab. Sometimes if I have a little trouble going over a zipper, I'll use something like this, or maybe a seam ripper or something to help push that along just a few stitches. Okay. That was easy. So now we've got a tab on both ends of our zipper. And I want to close the zipper up. And then on the ends, I'm just going to trim these two ends off where they are more even with the zipper. And they'll look like that. Same thing on this end. So they're approximately the same width as my zipper. Okay. Now, it is much easier, and I've found this out with trial and error, if you put your zipper in these things first. So to do that, though, I'm going to pick two sides, and I usually pick the sides that have a print to it because it's easier to hide a mistake in a print. Like this is kind of dark, and I think my white stitches will show up on that really easily. Probably show up on this one too, but maybe a little less. But this one, you could hide about anything in that pattern. So I'm definitely going to pick it. And I'm going to pick this brown one. And I'm going to lay them down on top of each other, right sides together. And I'm going to line up. Where I had this crease sewn in the middle, I can line that up. And where I had the crease on the end, I can line that up. Okay, so and if you want to put pins in here, you can do that. Usually if you have everything ironed real good, it'll stay in place. So what I want to do, this is the hardest part of the project, maybe. Okay, this zipper, when I do insert it, I want the little zipper pull to be up here on the end rather than down in the middle, because if you are leaning against this in a car, you don't want this little zipper pull to be right down against your neck. So to avoid that, you want it to be as far up on the end of this thing as possible. So usually that means coming up from this, and if you want to mark this, you can, this little center crease right here. I come up about 1.5 inches from that to start the bottom of my zipper, and that'll put it about like that. Okay, but we're not ready to put the zipper in just yet. What we want to do, we're going to come over in here about 1/2 inch, maybe not quite 1/2, but about 1/2. And so from this center line up the side of, without the zipper, sew up through here and stop just before you get to this curve. I would say about 1 inch from where it starts to curve. So just a seam. And this is pretty much a basting seam that will come out later. So I'm going to put this on a 3mm stitch. That won't be so hard to rip out. So I'm going to put my needle down right at that crease. And I usually use this foot that I have. I usually use the width of the foot as my guide, and that works out pretty good for me. And now I'm sewing all the way down through there. Okay. Actually, I got back a little bit far. Let me bring my foot up. try to start right about that crease. Okay. Now, and this is a curved project, so you'll learn to just curve your fabric. I just use these 2 fingers up here to move my fabric around if I need to curve it. And I'm going to stop about right there. Let's say about an inch or so from where it starts to get some curve to it. And I'm going to cut my thread and take it out of there. So now I have just one little thing sewn. And we're going to open that up and look at it. And we want the right sides down, so we're looking at the seam we just sewed. It's sticking up in the air. And we're going to actually open this seam up, take our little iron and press that open flat. And I'm going to, you can't see it, it's off camera, but I've got a little iron here that I'm using to the side. And I'm just going to go over here and just flatten that down as flat as I can, and I will be right back. Okay, now I promise this is probably going to be the hardest part of the project, and if you can get through this, you've got it made. So this is where our zipper is going to go, and we're actually going to sew the zipper on here. After it's on, we're going to go and rip this seam out, and I know that makes no sense right now, but it will later. Okay, so I'm starting out with my zipper closed, and I'm looking. Remember I said to come up about 1.5 inches from that center crease to start your zipper. So that's what I'm doing. I'm coming up about 1.5 inches or wherever it looks right to me, so that this pull is up here at the end. But I'm going to put it face down on that seam. I know it seems like we're sewing just totally backwards, and I'm also going to put my zipper foot on now so that we could sew close to the zipper. Okay, got that on there. Now, I'm not pinning anything. I'm just going to hold this in place, but the center of my zipper, I'm going to line up with the center of that seam where it's sewn together and just hold it on there as I'm sewing. So I'm going on here, 1.5 inches or so from there, lining this up with the middle, right? And then I'm going to sew as close to the actual zipper teeth as I can. I'm going to start down here on the end of my tab. And don't forget those little metal things that are in there. You still have to be careful with those. Because this zipper wants to go from side to side. So our key right here is to try and keep this center line lined up with the center line of this seam. So I will be lifting it up and looking under here to see that I have that lined up. And then I'll sew down a little ways. Oops, my thread is unthreaded, wouldn't you know? Let me thread my machine and we'll do that all over again. Okay, we're threaded. Now, go back, line back up right where we were at. And see, I'm going down at the end of my zipper tab, right down at the end. Put my foot down. And this is when I start looking underneath to make sure I'm lined up with that seam. And I'm going as close to my zipper teeth as I can. Go slow. The first side will be kind of the easiest. And you got to watch your this little flippy thing on your zipper too. I keep it flipped out here. Sew up through there. Don't come all the way to your little thing. You're going to have to raise your foot and then reach under here and unzip the zipper. You're going to have to turn it sideways. Okay. Put your foot back down. And then you're going to sew all the way up through there to the end. Again, keeping this lined up, but coming all the way to the end of your zipper tab. And Then I just raise my foot and spin this around sideways. I'm going to go across the end of that tab just enough to get to the other side of the teeth. That's just going to be a few stitches. Then I'm going to lift my foot again and spin it around again. And we're going to be coming back down the zipper on the other side. Again, keeping these teeth as close together as you can. And sewing close to them, but being careful. Okay. Now there's a really tricky part coming up. Keep those teeth pushed together. And then when you get almost down there, you're going to have to stop again. You've got to get this little zipper pull out of your way. But the problem is you kind of got yourself sewn into a corner. And so this is where this little hook works out good, or just whatever you've got, you can get a hold of it in there in that zipper and get a hold of that thing. I can put that right in that hole. I don't know if you can see that. And I can pull that zipper and zip it. I'm trying to get my hand in the way on this side where you can't see. Okay. Well, I'm trying to be careful not to block your view, but get the job done, and it's kind of hard. Okay. So now I've got my zipper almost closed. You don't have to close it all the way, just enough to get it out of your way. And then you're going to sew all the way down to the end of that tab. Then we're going to raise our foot and go across the end of that tab. All that just reinforcement. And then I usually raise my foot and go just a stitch or two down over right where we started. Maybe back up one or two. And then cut my thread. Raise your foot. Okay. Now, the zipper's in there, but it's not usable really on either side, because this side, we've got it partially zipped. We can just see a little bit of that tab sticking out. This side is completely closed up because we sewed that seam down in the beginning. You can't get to the zipper to open it. So, what you're going to do is take a seam ripper and go right in here between these two seams, and you're going to rip that seam out, but you've got to be super careful right here because you don't want to rip your fabric. So you're going in there. That's why we made our stitch length a little bigger in the beginning. Makes it a little easier to rip out. And then you can get in there to your zipper. Just take it easy. And now I usually don't rip it all the way out in the beginning. In fact, sometimes I do something else before I get this far, but maybe we'll talk about that later. Okay. I'm just taking out enough that I can get to that zipper. And I can unzip it if I need to. Okay. Now, I'm going to flip it back over and just look at the other side for a minute. So, hang on a second. Take a little bit more here. These little tabs, I like to, and you wouldn't have to do this either, but you know, when we were sewing, we sewed across the end of each tab. I also like to come up here on the other end of this tab. There's a line of stitching there where we sewed it to the zipper, but I like to come up here and do a little reinforcement across each of the inside ends of that tab. Just a little bit. Let me spin it around. That's just reinforcement. I'll go forward and back go just a few stitches, enough to get across the teeth, and then back, just to reinforce and cut my thread. I'll do the same thing on this end, but this is the end where I have to unzip it. Same thing. Down, forward and back to reinforce. Go across the teeth. Have to get a little push, and then back and forth again. And cut it. And then our zipper is in there. It's in there to stay. And now you can see, there'll be a few little straggly threads here that you need to cut off. Man, I wish we had better light. Just can't get it there. I cut off my little threads at this point because I'll forget to do it later. It's hard to tell how many of these I've mailed out that's got little strings hanging on them. So, you know, we ripped out our stitches here. Now I look at this to make sure that I rip it out right down to where that first little cross section of stitching was at on each end. And then your zipper's done. Completely done. Very good. And, you know, it's just like virtually and almost invisible, not quite. An invisible zipper is already sewn together where this piece is pretty much invisible before you put the zipper in. But that's really all you can see. Here's a little bit of that. Okay, so now we're ready to construct this whole thing, big piece together. Get my tools out of the way. And since we're done with the zipper, I'm going to take my zipper foot off, put my real foot back on. I know this is a long video, so I hope you just skip through the parts you don't want to see. Now, you can see right here where we stopped stitching up here at the curve, and we want to stitch from there over to this center. And it's usually easier if you start at the center and sew back to the zipper. Don't go past that center crease. You want to put your needle down right at that center crease. Okay. Now, you could do a forward and back stitch or something to reinforce it. Like go forward a stitch or two and back a stitch or two. That just keeps it from raveling out. My machine happens to have like a little bar tack thing that I can just push. But not everybody has that. So then we're just going to go around this curve. And we're going to meet where we stopped sewing over here. It's a little bit tricky sometimes to get that to come together just right. And right there you want to do a little forward and back thing also. Okay, got your thread. Alright. Now, there's one of our little corners done. And right up to our zipper, so that looks good. Alright, the rest of this will go fairly quick. Now what I want you to do is on the same side that that zipper was on, you're going to go from the zipper all the way down to this crease and stop. Okay? So I am lining up. And I'm actually going to, you know, I have to go back here a little bit farther than I thought, just because you got to get back to where you stopped sewing at the end of that zipper. Do some reinforcement stitches. And come on down through here. And now, if you're not used to sewing curved things, you might want to go real slow right here. And we're going to stop at the center crease. Now, if you have trouble with this curve, you can always lift your foot, spin it around a little, take a few stitches, lift your foot, and spin it around. Okay. few stitches, just anchor it down, cut my thread. There we go. Those two sides are complete. Now what we have to do is get this side in there in our little end strap. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to take our little end straps. Remember we folded them in two and pressed them. That didn't hold real well, but we're going to keep them folded. And you've got this nice crease here that you ironed in, and you're going to put that in the center of this, fold it up. Alright, like that. And then you're just going to sew a few stitches across the end to hold that down. This is just, again, reinforcement. And actually, I'm going to show you, you can actually jut this out a little bit beyond that so that it sticks out. That's okay too. Just so you've got it center of that crease. A few stitches to hold it down. And leave it there. And you've got it pointing back towards the inside. That's my iron beeping. Do the same thing on this one. Make sure it's folded in two. Lined up with the center crease. And a few stitches across the end. Okay. Now, if you want to, you could put a couple of pins in here just to hold these still and out of your way. Nothing wrong with that. I'm used to them flopping around, but nothing wrong with putting them down. Okay, so this piece is opened up, see, like this. And then this piece is going to go down, right sides down. Okay, so we now have all three of our pieces lined up. Got to be careful not to sew it all down together, but this is going to be three-sided. Remember, you got to pick this one side up. Okay. And again, I usually start sewing in this middle joint here. It's a little easier for me for some reason. Down this side and see we've got this one down here and one over here. Just make sure you're only sewing two pieces together here. You don't have three. Round the curve. And we're going to come up here to this strap. Alright, now we're going to sew. And then I do it sometimes with the strap on the top, which I've got it on the top piece now, or you can do it on the bottom. Doesn't really matter. But you just kind of need to know where this seam is on the bottom, because you don't want to sew over that seam. You want to sew right up to it. No more than like one stitch in on that next fabric. This will make sense when you're sitting at the sewing machine and you come to that. So if you cut down, you can see that crease in this top line. That usually means you're there. And I'll back up a couple of stitches. Cut my thread. Then I'll look and see. Yeah, that's good. Now I'm going to flip it around. Go down the other side of that. This time the little tag, this little thing will be on the bottom. Man, I hope you could see this. Sometimes it's just about how you lay it. When I was doing these in the beginning, goodness gracious, I thought I was working some kind of a jigsaw puzzle. Okay. Again, we're lining everything up. Pay attention to those creases. Those creases really help. Here we go. And if you're a pinner, just pin it. Nothing wrong with that. Now this time when you come down that seam, you're going to be able to tell it because you can see where you've seamed before. And if we get it a little too far, there's a remedy for that too. Okay. So now we've got that side sewed down. We've got one more side to sew. We're getting there. Before you do that, reach in here and unzip the zipper. If you don't, you can't turn it wrong side out. And you can unzip it, it's just hard. Okay, now I'm going to look at where I sewed these. This one worked out really good. This one's got a little pucker to it. So I'm just going to reach in here and snip that one little stitch to loosen that up. Okay. And then we've got these last two pieces to sew together. And you can start from what makes sense to you. It's just always worked out better for me to start in this middle of the project as far as getting things lined up. Okay, this is where things have to come together good. I can see where my stitches were here, and I'm coming right up to it. Maybe one stitch in, backing up, and my thread. Now, in the end, we're going to open it up and look at that and make sure it looks good before we go on and finish everything out. Okay, flip it over again back to my middle seam. I'll go back one or two stitches into it where I started. Okay, line everything up, and here we go. Back up a few. Got it. Now, in theory, we're done with the sewing part. What I like to do is reach in my zipper. All these things are sewn together. But I like to reach in my zipper, get a hold of one of those tabs, get this close one, pull it out. And let's look at how that seam came together. And if I need to do some tweaking on that, I can. So this side looks really good. Pull it on out of there a little bit. And we'll check out this other side. And the other side really looks good too. It came to, see, this side will just be one piece of fabric on that side. And this side will be two pieces. And just so they come together and they're not horribly puckered, or even if there's a little bit of pucker there, it's okay because it's going to be a three-dimensional kind of thing. Okay, now I'm going to reach all the way down in there to the other tab on the other end and pull it out. And we'll check out that end. Same way. If that end's good, guess what? We're done. We're ready to fill this thing up. So look, that's a tiny zipper. A little 4-inch zipper is small. So be patient. Don't pull on it too hard. You don't want to rip any stitches out. Boy, I did a bunch of that in the beginning. So just work all that out of there slowly. I'm going to get this other end out, the strap. I'm going to look at it exactly the same way and just look and see if we have any puckers. So this side always looks good. It's just one fabric. And then this side, it may have one little pucker to it, but I think it's enough. It's good. When we get this out in a three-dimensional manner, it's all going to be good. If I needed to, just to show you, like there's one little stitch there I could clip and turn it back out wrong side out and just sew it a little bit more till I got it tweaked just right. But I think it's just fine the way it is. Now I take this is a paint stick, and I reach down in here and just work my little curved corners out a little bit. just to make sure they're not puckered up too. Okay. And this thing, I do that on both ends. So there's that end. And then I do all three on this end. And then we're ready to stuff this thing. And I'll move my camera back over to my cutting spot, and I'll show you how I measure out my polyfill to put inside here. Yeah, and you can put something in it besides polyfill. Some lady sent me a message and asked if I could fill it with something I never heard of, like some kind of berries or seeds or something. And I basically told her she could fill it with anything she wanted to, and I'll be glad to do one of these and mail it to somebody without any filling in it. And they could put their own thing in there. So we are ready to fill this little baby up. It looks good. Wow, this has been a really long video, but I just wanted to show you real quickly how I go about getting the right amount of fiber fill in my pillow. And I have a scale here that I weigh. I use it for my postage and everything, but it has a setting on it. When I turn it on, it's 0. But I can set a container on here, and then I can make it 0 out again so that it accounts for that weight of that container. And then I just start filling up that container with fiber fill until I reach 10 ounces. That's what I put in my pillows as a starting point. And I get it pretty much as dead set on 10 as I can. Sometimes I take a little tad out, and I'll just put in little bitty pieces until I get it right at 10. I'm at 9.8. Wait a minute, I'm going to have to come around to the other side. I think I read that wrong. It's upside down to me. Okay. Oh no, we got a long way to go. So I put a big bunch in there. That's 6.7. So these pillows will hold a lot. I like to stuff them tight, and people can take it out if they need to. Still measuring. There's 9 ounces. Compact it down a little. Need a bigger container. Sorry, I have my hands in front of you. 9.6 ounces, and I just keep doing that until I get right at 10 ounces. And we're right there. So take that off. So I've got my whole container of fluff there, and I just start stuffing it in here. And this is such a tiny little hole to stuff into, but you can do it. Just take your time so that you're not ripping out stitches as you do. And then I just use my trusty little paint stick to poke it down in there and get it, you know, feel the end farthest away from the zipper first, and poking it down in all those corners. So once you get it stuffed and zip the zipper up, it's ready to ship off to the customer. So this has been a really long video, but hopefully you're going to learn something. And this gives me something now that in the future, if I don't make pillows for a couple months or something and I forget, how did I do that on that zipper, I can just jump back in and skip through the video to that spot and look and see how I did that. So, and as far as zippers, I usually get those on Amazon. And if I'm out in the thrift store too, if I see zippers, I always get them. You can get them there for like 50 cents a piece. I don't care what they are, what size or color they are, I grab them because I use zippers in a lot of things. But you can usually get a big pack of zippers at like a wholesale price on Amazon. They're super cheap. In this fiber feel, I usually get it on Amazon too, or sometimes from Joann's. I just check who's got the best sale, and I buy in those really big boxes. I can't remember how many pounds it is now. It's something like 50 pounds or something, but it'll be like 3 gigantic bags in there. But that's the more efficient way to do it because I make so many of these. And I will leave some links down below on my store, my Facebook page, those kinds of things, in case you need to get in touch with me about anything. And again, if this is something you want to be a part of, go ahead and hit subscribe so you'll see what we're doing and can keep up with us. And we will go from there. It might be a little while before I make another video. And if you have some ideas, some things that you'd like to see, I'd be glad to put that on here. Maybe look at my store. If you see something on there and you'd like to just learn how to make it yourself, give me a shout out and I'll do another little video. I am going to start doing some patterns on some things, some crochet patterns, and I'll probably put this out there as a pattern as well. Probably a download pattern, and you can either go make your own template, or I'll be glad to make you a little homemade template and send it to you if that's what you want. It might not be very pretty, it might have my handwriting on it, but it will definitely be handmade, right? So, okay, until next time, I will keep on sewing. See ya. Here's a picture of a little video of our finished product after it's put together and stuffed. There's our little zipper. So can you see why I'd say put this end up here so that if you get down here and here, you wouldn't want to pinch your neck. So here's how our colors turned out. Maybe not the greatest match, but it will be fine. I promise somebody will love the color. And then the straps on each end.